All right, ambassadors, it is now time for math. It's now time for math. So right now, I want you to go get your math paper or math sheet that says identify solid figures. Go get your math sheet that says identify solid figures. Identify solid figures. All right, once you retrieve your paper that says identify solid figures, do me a favor and let's both look at the objective. Let's both look at the objective. The objective will be found directly under the title, which says identify solid figures. So now your objective says identify solid figures. Let's read vocabulary. Your vocabulary words are solid figures, sphere, cone, cube, cylinder, pyramid, and rectangular prism. Again, your vocabulary words are solid figure, sphere, cone, cube, cylinder, pyramid, and rectangular prism. Learn. There are some solid figures. There are some solid figures. Let's look at each solid figure and let's say its name. Starting with sphere, let's go. Sphere, what's next to the sphere? A cone, what's next to the cone? A cube, what's next to the cube? A cylinder, and what's next to the cylinder? A pyramid, and last but certainly not least, what's the last one? A rectangular prism. Let's look at the cloud. The cloud says, remember, a cube is a special kind of rectangular prism. A cube is a special kind of rectangular prism. Guided practice. It says circle the objects that are shaped like the solid figures. Cross out the objects that are not shaped like the solid figures. So number one, as always, is already done for you. But number one, what's that first object? Or what is that first solid figure? That first solid figure is called a sphere. So looking at the four options that they give you, let's look at the first option. The first option is a what? It's some sort of can. It's some sort of can. So is a can in the same shape or the same, or does it look the same as a sphere? It does not. So go ahead and trace the X on that can for me, please. On number one, go ahead and trace the X on that can. What is the next object that they give you? What is the next object option that they give you? That is called a soccer ball. Is a soccer ball the same as a sphere? Yes, it is. Go ahead and circle that soccer ball. Go ahead and trace around that circle on the soccer ball. Let's look at the next object that they give you. That next object is an ice cream cone. It looks like a waffle cone if you ask me, but it is an ice cream cone. Is the cone the same as a sphere? It is not. Go ahead and trace that X on the cone for me, please. And the last object is called a what? It is called a bowling ball. Is the bowling ball the same as a sphere? It is. So go ahead and trace that circle around the bowling ball. Good job. So our two items that we found that are the same as a sphere was what? What was the first item? The soccer ball. And then the second item was called a bowling ball. Great job. So now let's look at number two. What is that solid figure on number two? That solid figure is called a rectangular prism. So that solid figure is called a rectangular prism. Ms. Brown tried to draw it the best way she knew how, but of course it's not as perfect as the one on your paper, but it looks a little bit resembling. So number two, the object that they show you is called a rectangular prism. So now we have to look at these other four objects that are beside it and discover which ones are the same as a rectangular prism. So let's look at the first object. What is the first object called? It looks like a box, some sort of box. Maybe you can use it as like a tissue box cover or maybe like a bin. But looking at the shape of it, is it the same as a rectangular prism? Is it the same as a rectangular prism? It is. So do me a favor and go ahead and circle that first object on number 2. Go ahead and circle that first object on number 2. Again, go ahead and circle that first object on number 2. Why are we circling it? Because it is in resemblance to the rectangular prism. It is in resemblance to the rectangular prism. Let's look at the next object. Looking at the next object, what type of object is that? That is some type of cone, some decorative type of cone. So is that cone the same as a solid figure rectangular prism? It is not. So what are we doing since it's not the same? We're putting an X on it. So go ahead and put your X on that cone. Go ahead and put your X on that cone. All right, looking at the next object, what is the next object called? The next object is called a ball of yarn. A ball of yarn. Is a ball of yarn the same as a rectangular prism? It is not. So what are we going to do when the item is not the same? We're going to put an X on it. So let's go ahead and mark an X on that ball of yarn. Let's go ahead and mark an X on that ball of yarn. And last and certainly not least, it's called a what? The last object is called a box of orange juice. That is called a box of orange juice. So looking at that box of orange juice, does it resemble a rectangular prism? Does it resemble a rectangular prism? It does. Although it may not be standing or sitting the exact same way as the rectangular prism, it does resemble a rectangular prism. So if it looks like it, then what are we doing? We're circling it. So go ahead and circle the box of orange juice. Go ahead and circle the box of orange juice. Again, go ahead and circle the box of orange juice. So looking at number 2, what 2 items did we circle? We circled the box or basket. And then the second item that we circled was a what? Was the box of orange juice. Was the box of orange juice. So now let's look at number 3. What solid figure is shown in number 3? What is the name of that solid figure shown in number 3? That solid figure is called a cylinder. It is called a cylinder. So again, you have 4 items, and we have to decide which 4 items resemble or is the same as the cylinder. So the first item that we see is called a what? That is called a tennis ball. So looking at a tennis ball, looking at a cylinder, are they the same or are they different? They are definitely different. Looking at a tennis ball, what solid figure does a tennis ball resemble? It resembles a sphere. So, since it does not look like a cylinder, we're going to put a what on it? We're putting an X on it. So let's go ahead and cross out that tennis ball. Let's go ahead and cross out that tennis ball. All right, now let's look at the next item that is beside the tennis ball. That is called a what? That is called a box of tissue. A box of tissue. Is a box of tissue the same as a cylinder? Is a box of tissue the same as a cylinder? It is not. So when it is not the same, then what do? You're going to mark an X. So let's go ahead and mark an X on the box of tissue. Let's go ahead and mark an X on the box of tissue. Let's look at your next item on number 3. What is the next item on number 3? That next item is oatmeal. It is oatmeal. It is a can of oatmeal or a container of oatmeal. Is that container of oatmeal in the same shape as a cylinder? It is. So when something is the same as a cylinder, then what are we doing? We're going to circle it. So let's go ahead and circle that oatmeal container. Let's go ahead and circle that oatmeal container. We're circling it because it is the same. It resembles a cylinder. And let's look at your last option on that. And what is that called? That is called a can of tuna. A can of tuna. So does a can of tuna resemble a cylinder or is it different? A can of tuna looks like a cylinder. So right now you're going to go ahead and circle the can of tuna. You're going to circle the can of tuna. Go ahead and circle the can of tuna. All right, so looking at number 3, what 3 items did you circle? You circled the container of oatmeal and then I'm sorry, not 3. What 2 items did you circle? One of them you circled the can of oatmeal, and what was the second item that you circled? The can of tuna. Great job. All right, we got one more. Let's look at number 4. What solid figure is shown on number 4? That solid figure's name is called a what? It is called a cone. So just like 1 through 3, you have 4 options. And we have to decide out of those 4 options which ones resemble or look like a cone. So let's look at the first option. What is the first option shown? The first option looks like a waffle cone again. It looks like some type of ice cream cone. So the name of it is in the exact same name of the solid figure. So does the ice cream cone and the cone resemble each other? They do. So if they look alike, then what do? We're circling. So let's go ahead and circle that cone. Let's go ahead and circle the cone. Let's go ahead and circle the cone. Now let's look at that next object. Let's look at that next object. What is that next object called? That is called a globe. That is called a globe. So looking at the globe, does that globe resemble the solid figure shown, which is a cone? Does the globe resemble a cone? It does not. A globe does not look like a cone. But what solid figure does a globe look like? What solid figure does a globe look like? It looks like a sphere. So since it does not look like a cone, what are we going to do to the globe? We're going to put an X on it. So let's go ahead and cross out or put an X on the globe. Let's go ahead and put an X on the globe. Let's look at your next object. What is your next object called? That is a party hat. That is a party hat. Looking at the shape of the party hat and looking at our solid figure, do they resemble each other? Yes, they do. So let's go ahead and do what to that birthday hat? We have to circle it. So let's go ahead and circle the birthday hat. Let's circle the birthday hat. And now, last but certainly not least, that object is called a what? That object is called a book. It may be some type of Bible or maybe a book. Nope, yep, it's a book. So that object is called a book. Does that book resemble the solid figure, which is a cone? Does that book resemble the solid figure, which is a cone? It does not. So what do we do if something does not resemble the solid figure? We put an X on it. So let's go ahead and put an X on the book. Let's go ahead and put an X on the book. So now, what two objects resembled my solid figure, which was a cone? What two objects resembled my solid figure, which was a cone? We have the ice cream cone or the waffle cone as the first one. Then the second one was the what? Was the birthday party hat. Was the birthday party hat. So now, before I end the video, let's go ahead and look on the back. Let's go ahead and look on the back. On the back, it says independent practice. Independent practice, which means that this is the part that you will do on your own. The directions on the back under independent practice says to circle the objects that have the same shape and cross out the objects that does not belong. So again, it says to circle the objects that have the same shape. Cross out the object that does not belong. So that means that a couple of them will be the same and one will be different. So the one that is different, you're going to mark an X on it, but the ones that are the same, you're going to circle them. And then it says to name that solid figure, you circle. It says to name that solid figure, you circle. So again, there will be multiple that are the same. The ones that are the same, you're going to circle. And then there will be one that will be different. And the one that is different, you're going to mark an X on it. After you do that, you're going to write the name of the objects in which you have circled. So let's look at number one. As always, number one is always done for you. So let's look at number one. Number one, they marked an X on what object? What object did they mark an X on? They marked an X on the can because the can resembles what solid figure? What solid figure does the can resemble? The can resembles a cylinder. So I need you to go ahead and trace over the X that is on the can. Go ahead and trace over the X that is on the can. Now, let's look at the three objects that they did circle. What are the name of the three objects that they did circle? Two of them are ice cream cones, and the last one is a birthday party hat. Good job. So those three items that they did circle, what solid figure does those three items resemble? It resembles a cone. So on the line, they wrote cone. So right now, I want you to circle the three items, but trace the three items that they circled, and then trace over the word cone. And now you're going to do that same thing for numbers 2 through 4. And then on number 5, it says Ty drew a solid figure. It is not a cylinder. It is not a rectangular prism. Circle the solid figure Ty drew. So if it is not a cylinder and it is not a rectangular prism, circle the one that is not a cylinder and that is not a rectangular prism. All right, that completes all of your math for today. I hope you all enjoy math, and I will see you all in reading.